I'm welcoming Alan Miheso to come just give opening remarks. After that, we shall welcome Madam Irene Otieno, who is the National Coordinator, Taxpayers Association, NTA, to come present the report to us. So, does Alan deserve a round of applause? Yes, he does. So let's give him a good round of applause as he comes to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Preston. Once again, good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Alan Miheso. I'm the project assistant at the National Taxpayers Association. I take this chance to welcome you once again to our launch. This is just a case study. It's not more of a report, but it's a case study of on-source revenue. We all know that since the devolution came into existence after the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, counties were given the mandate to source for their own sources of revenue to enhance service delivery, both for current and developmental expenditure. So on-source revenue is a key aspect for county government.
Having members of press and our colleagues, our community units, Kedaspit, Border Association, and our other friends here, because we note also that this is a festive season, and so even having you in the room is something we do not take for granted. Possibly, I know the media people are used to seeing the politicians, but today you have to deal with us only. And this is informed by the timing. We really would have loved to disseminate this report around January mid when people are back, but it is what it is, and so we are here. As Alan has mentioned, today we are looking at a case study of Nairobi County, looking at on-source revenue. I will be fairly brief. And I will attempt to step in the shoes of our consultant who, because of the festive season and other engagements, would have loved to be here, either virtually or physically, but would not be with us. For the people that are meeting in TA maybe for the first time, as you can see, this is an institution that seeks to connect taxes and service delivery. We agree as a country with what the national level through KRA says, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea. Counties also are supposed to get revenue to fund development. However, we feel that the conversation leans on one side. When we only talk about kulipa ushuru, huwezi jitegemea if there is no accountability on that ushuru. However much we give as taxpayers, both the corporate and the individual taxpayer, if there is no accountability, hakuna kujitegemea, we will never be sustainable. So I think that what we have as a rallying point for KRA needs to be linked with the issues of accountability. And that's where National Taxpayers Association comes in. A lot of our work is to look at the reports from oversight institutions. We know that on matters revenue, we cannot have any conversation without looking at issues coming from the Commission of Revenue Allocation. So there are reports that come from CRA on revenue, and that is what we have heavily relied on when we are looking at this case study. What is coming out in terms of on-source revenue in Nairobi County among other counties? What are the finance acts at the county looking like? So allow me to just go straight to say that the issues around on-source revenue are not peculiar to Kenya itself. There is consensus at a regional level. When we look at the Addis Ababa financing mechanism, it speaks about the best way for a country, for African countries to develop is through tax, not through debt. I know a lot of the media people here know NTA and their friends TISA and other colleagues when we are looking at Okoa Uchumi Coalition. That is our other coalition as CSOs that knows that if we do not address debt, we will continue paying high taxes. So that Addis Ababa financing mechanism acknowledges that debt grants are not the most sustainable way to fund development. Rather, taxation and domestic mobilization, domestic resource mobilization is the way, not taxation, domestic resource mobilization is the way to fund development. So there has been a lot of conversation saying that counties are not collecting sufficient revenue, but they are heavily relying on the equitable share to be able to fund development. Economists, and I'm no economist, but economists have mentioned that it is not sustainable again for counties to always wait for equitable share. So they are being pushed to collect on-source revenue. But our concern as an organization is, yes, counties, and there's been ranking, and there's been discussion on how counties are faring in terms of on-source revenue, but our interest as NTA was, yes, on-source revenue is coming up in some counties, but at what expense are we collecting that revenue? Are we only looking at increase in revenue without looking at what is the impact of this on the traders? If you have Kenasbit and the hawkers. So if we say a revenue stream is the money they give the county, what does that mean to a small trader? If you're looking at our local markets in Nairobi County, and we are saying that on-source revenue is the amount they are offloading their cargo, what does that mean to households and businesses that have to buy that produce? So if we are coming in to say we need to look at the impact of these revenue-raising measures on women, youth, and PWDs, the marginalized groups in our society. Alan, kindly help me go straight to it. As you can see, in our case, we are only focusing first on Nairobi. You might ask, why are we focusing on Nairobi County, and we have 47 counties? First, our rationale was because Nairobi County collects the highest, it has the highest potential, simply because it's the capital, simply because the streams of revenue available to Nairobi County cannot be compared to areas like Turkana, areas like Mandera. So you will see that Nairobi County has been highlighted first because it naturally should have a very high potential. The question is whether that potential is being met. The second reason why, again, we focus on Nairobi County is because the Commission on Revenue Allocation picked Nairobi County among the 4 counties that are problematic on matters on source revenue. This is according to a report by Commission on Revenue Allocation, authored in 2019, that was looking at on-source revenue for the last 6 years. What has been the trend? What has been the good things and the bad things? So I don't know whether it's showing there, Alan. Just take me there, and we're going to come back to this. Yes, I wanted to mention the counties that you can see where Nairobi, Homa Bay, Busia, Wajir, and Mandera are the counties that were mentioned as being problematic by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. That with the last 6 years, that is from 2019, from devolution to 2019, we find that their revenue has declined. So on that other hand, you see counties like Embu, Bungoma, and Garissa. This was tripled their revenue collection, growing by 247%, 256%, and 202% respectively, from 2013 financial year to that 2019 we are looking at. So you're looking at the counties that are doing well, those ones you can say, and sometimes we mention that the northern frontier counties are not doing well in terms of on-source revenue. But you're seeing Garissa has been picked as among counties that were able to triple their revenue. So there is no excuse to say sometimes it is just geographical and climatic conditions that also affects on-source revenue. It must also be, and it can be a consequence of what systems are you putting in place. Is there political goodwill to actually collect that revenue? So you can see the rationale. We said, if a county that has the greatest potential is being picked by Commission on Revenue Allocation as problematic, what excuse do we have as Nairobi County? And this is a county that should, a lot of people are coming in from other counties to do business here. So that is the reason we focused on that county. You can see, let's go back to the start of the slide, Anna. Yes. So we're saying that Nairobi County's OSR, that is on-source revenue, had only grown by 0.1% over the last 6 years. Yet, let me focus on just the growth. So the problem with Nairobi is not that it is declining, like Homa Bay and everything else, but the growth is too small relative to its revenue streams and the nature of Nairobi County. We are also saying that according to, there are already thresholds of revenue set. Internationally, when you look at the Organization of Economic Development, OECD, they mention that at subnationals, a country such as Kenya that has devolution, has subnationals, each subnational should be able to raise 20.9% of their budget from OSR. And so that is a threshold we are holding Nairobi to. So in as much as Nairobi has gotten, we are saying the growth has been 0.1, but it has reached the threshold that has been put for a subnational. This is Nairobi, Mombasa, together with Anna, let's go to the next slide. Yes. So we are saying there are only 3 counties that have actually met that threshold. It is Nairobi, Mombasa, and we have the ones that with the game park, Narok. So those ones have done well. At least for subnational, they are where they are supposed to be. Let's continue, Alan. So we looked, in terms of looking at on-source revenue, we heavily relied, as I mentioned, on reports from Controller of Budgets, report from Commission on Revenue Allocation, the county itself when you look at their finance acts, and we also looked at the Auditor General's report. The reason we were looking at these 3 institutions is because by their very nature they've been monitoring on-source revenue. So they have a lot of rich information. The question is, are we as citizens and organizations using that information to hold leaders to account? We do not have to reinvent the wheel that we are all analyzing on-source revenue. Sometimes there's even the capacity gap, because these are institutions that already have the expertise within them. So first we looked at the 2021-2022 OCOB report. What are they saying on Nairobi on-source revenue? So you can see that Nairobi generated 9.24 billion as on-source revenue. And that represented a decrease of 7.2% compared to 9.96 billion that they had in 2020-2021. Okay? So you're seeing between those years there was a decrease. And in terms of the target, because we say every county projects how much revenue they will collect. So in terms of actually getting the 9.24 billion, it was just 47.1% of the annual target. So we need to ask ourselves, why was Nairobi County not able to get the revenue that it had anticipated to get in 2021-2022? And when I'm talking about that, I'm not then saying that we should increase taxes. My question is, not getting to your target does not mean increase taxes. That is the narrative we seek to change with this type of conversations. And that's why we are looking at the Auditor General's report. If you only look at this like that, you would then be giving the CEC for Finance in Nairobi targets and saying you need to tighten taxes, fees and levies in Nairobi County. But when you look at the Auditor General's report, you see why the targets were not met. There were areas of seepages and lack of accountability that needed to be firmed up. So you can see that. Alan, let's move. So the underperformance of the on-source revenue at 9 against the annual projection we have said is that is less than the target by 47. In terms of what the Controller of Budget gave as a recommendation in that financial year is that there is need. The county should address its revenue performance to ensure the approved budget is fully financed. What we feel again from the Controller of Budget, and that is a recommendation that we have given with our undertaking and our partnership with Controller of Budget, is that we need more details from the Controller of Budget. When you only give this as one-liner recommendation, and if you look at the OCOB report, you'll find that per financial year, maybe Nairobi County is just 3 pages, and it's a lot of tables. But when you look at what are the recommendations, what are the main issues, we were very interested from the Controller of Budget's report to try and find out if we are saying Nairobi County in that financial year collected 9.2 billion, we need to know which were the streams that contributed the most. And when you look at where this has been shared with us, we have been able to have a closed-door engagement with that office, and we have done a popular version of Kirinyaga County, where we said, give us more details. So the Controller of Budget has another report that is not what they give in the website, but you can get details. So there, like for Kirinyaga, we found out the highest stream of revenue was the health sector. I find that a bit problematic because health sector, public health sector is relied on by the marginalized when we are talking about women. So if a county looks at hospital as a revenue stream and not a service delivery area, you see the problems we start having. You cannot view a hospital the same way you view a market. Yes? So those ones are totally different. So that is what we are also saying, that we need to work with our oversight institutions for details that can help us in advocacy. If you're here in your boda association, you want to know what did parking, and even the public transport, you want to know how much did parking contribute to revenue streams in Nairobi. Then you can be able to have a conversation with your governor and say, Governor, in this financial year, we can see that we, as the players in public transport, contributed. We were number 2 in terms of revenue stream. But what is the state of our roads? So you're linking what you're bringing to the county with service delivery. But if our reports only give a sweeping statement like that, it becomes difficult for advocacy. People who are health rights advocates would want to know what was the contribution of health user fee, or the user fee from health in the higher levels. We know we do not have user fee in the lower levels, but when you go to Mama Lucy, you have to pay. So we need to know what is the contribution of Mama Lucy to Nairobi County, so that we can ask if in Nairobi County, health sector is the one that has created more in terms of revenue, why don't we have medicine? So you can link. We cannot be bringing resources, then that resource goes to wages or the county assembly, but the person that is producing the OSR is from the health sector, but the health sector does not have medicine. So we feel that the lack of sufficient data and data that speaks the Mwananchi language becomes very difficult then for the individual groups of taxpayers to have conversations with the elected leaders. So that is what we notice in that financial year. Alan, let's go on. So when you look at that, 2020-2021, we can see the own source that was raised was 10.24 billion. That is 62% of the target. At least it is above 50%. That year, in terms of collection, you are above 50%. It was an increase of 16.8% compared to 8.53 during the period financial year 2019-2020. So if you look at this graph, again, we mentioned the source of a lot of these documents are from Treasury, from the control of budget. You can see from 2013, 2014 to 2020, 2021, you can see how the on-source revenue has been moving on. From around 10.03 billion, that's in billions, to 11.4 billion, 11.7, 10.9. That is the average we have been doing as a county. And the Commission of Revenue Allocation still feels the growth has not been good for Nairobi County. And the reason we are coming in is that if most oversight institutions are saying the growth has not been good, it means they want the growth to go up. Tukisema growth ya on-source revenue ende juu inamaanisha nini? Sindio, inamaanisha ni sisi wanakujia. So that's why we feel we need to be prepared to put another narrative, to say yes, we agree that the on-source revenue for Nairobi is not growing to the level it's supposed to be growing. But we have a different solution. Before you increase taxes, have we looked at the audit issues that are coming in from the revenue? Have we been given more details to look and provide a solution rather than this half information that is only looking at the general increase, but you've not gone deeper to tell us more so that we can have an informed conversation. Alan, let's move on. Within that year, there was also recommendation from the control of budget, and the recommendations on on-source revenue from the OCOB have been standard. And that is what we are saying. Can we have more flesh in terms of this report? If on-source revenue is that important, and we all agree on-source revenue is super important for development, then its reporting should also show the weight that we attach to on-source revenue. We need more details. So for this year, again, we are saying the county should address revenue performance to ensure the approved budget is fully financed. Similar recommendation from the other one. Then the underperformance of on-source revenue, again, is a problem. So we are only speaking to underperformance. We are speaking to it being fully financed, but we are not speaking to what has caused those deviations. What is the best practice? So our recommendation, again, moving forward is, can we be able, when we say that Embu, Garissa, were able to triple, what learning was there? We should not just say Embu and Garissa tripled. What caused the tripling? What can we attribute to the tripling? And how can those ones can foster county-to-county learning so that Nairobi, Homa Bay can understand what is it that these other counties are doing over and above increasing the rates of taxes. Alan, let's move on. Okay, 2019-2020, the rate was 8.52 from on source. Then the county generated the numbers, and you can see the numbers. I don't really have to go about. I'm more interested really on the recommendations. Alan, let's go on. 58.7% of the annual target, and you can see the graph. So generally, if you see from this, it has been 58, but we have almost moved to 66.7% averaging. So there is need to push this. We agree that there is need to increase on-source revenue, but what we disagree with is the methodology of increasing the on-source. So our take is, do not first increase the rates, do not increase the streams of collecting the revenue before first addressing the accountability. You might find that when you actually have sealed the loopholes, there is no need of reviewing the annual the finance bill to vary it upward. You can guess my observation. Our observation has been standard, and that is what we put it there so that you can also interrogate, and the next time you get the authors of some of these reports, you bring it out. Why are the observations standard across? Can we put more creativity? What data can CSOs collect and share with these oversight institutions to ensure that the observations and the recommendations are a bit different? Anna? Within that financial year, there were some audit queries. So when you collect on-source revenue, you're supposed to bank it. That is what the law says. And you do not use it at source until, again, there's legislation passed for you to withdraw. But you can see there was a withdrawal of how much is this? You can see that numbers. The mathematicians in the room? Ama sote tukoligi moja. Mnaona hiyo number hapo, eh? So there was an irregular, how much? There tumefika million, billion.
6 billion.
6 billion, eh? Irregular withdrawal from a revenue account. So nyinyi mkikusanya, kuna wengine wanatoa. So nyinyi endeleeni kupeana bila kuuliza maswali. Na hii inafaa kuwa a critical question. If the people pay, and I think that is why we are saying as an institution, we need to organize around different groups. We have started with the informal traders group. We are with boda. Someone else can work with another group. So that group, akiangalia one, kwa mwaka sisi tunatoa hii. Alafu hii yote, hii pesa ya miaka ngapi mtu ame-withdraw? Na ime-withdraw kufanya nini? So those are the critical questions. This is a 17-18 report we have shared. I'm sure no one has acted on it or even looked at it. So this was done by Ouko, I guess. That's why Nancy, but no action. So even Nancy's report might get the same problems. So you can see there's one I wanted us to highlight. Yeah, let me move to this other one. We are being told that the county had 26 M-Pesa pay bill numbers for receiving county-owned revenue, but these accounts and statements were not provided. So imagine 26 pay bills. See pay bill ya duka yako chemist ni accounting. How many people are paying into that pay bill? Many, see? And those are 26 pay bills, but the county was not able to give a statement of those pay bills. So you can imagine how much Nairobi residents might have lost. And so that is a bit problematic for us. So, Alan, take us, if there are audit queries there. So we have social halls that people also use pay. Kariobangi, Dandora, you can see there, they were hired out. They generated revenue, but there was never any accountability on any records shared with the Auditor General. So I know even as an organization, we use a lot of these social halls for community events. So this means a lot of this money is used at those local levels and does not come to the county. There is also uncollected revenue from some rentals. You can see how much it is. Those ones are in Dandora. And so also these ones, all of them, they were not accounted for. So there is quite a bit of audit queries coming from Nairobi County in terms of their revenue. And that is why we reiterate that it's a bit premature to tell residents to increase on-source revenue without addressing the systemic issues here. A lot of the institutions have leverage on technology, but we see our county, sometimes they're not also using that technology. So if a revenue officer collects the money, how sure are we that this money gets to the county where it's supposed to go to? Alan? So in terms of way forward, having looked at the 5 financial years, having looked at the targets, and we have seen we are doing an average of 66.7 of our annual targets in Nairobi County, we have agreed that on-source revenue has only increased by 0.1% in Nairobi County, a county that has great potential. Having looked again at a lot of audit queries, that unless the county furnishes us with the responses to the Auditor General, then we assume that money is lost, isn't it? So what does that mean for a taxpayer? And then how do we move out of the issues that we have raised? So we are not here simply to tell you those numbers, but how do we get a way forward? So one, there is need for collaboration between the Commission, that is the Commission on Revenue Allocation, and other bodies responsible for OSR, that is for on-source revenue, to work with counties with negative or no growth, with a view of coming up with county-specific interventions. And I mentioned county-specific because we have seen the recommendations from the reports I have shared with you are standard for all the 47 counties. They do not have similar problems. So we need county-specific interventions, and what we need to underscore as NTA is the need for collaboration. The reason I say collaboration is one. If we are having a Commission on Revenue Allocation saying the revenue targets are low, we are not reaching the targets, that means they are saying increase on-source revenue. On the other hand, Controller of Budget is saying that there is a challenge with the OSR. Auditor General is saying even the OSR that you're saying you've collected 66.7, half of it you have eaten or has audit problems. So how are these independent commissions collaborating on OSR? I know there is a caucus for the independent commissions, and so we want that this will be one of the key agendas. Can the independent commission share and link their reports on revenue, and whether that will be able to help us address some of the challenges? So we want to say that as we move to 2023, a key request from us as civil society players and as National Taxpayers Association is for more collaboration on revenue matters and accountability on OSR. We also need to understand in terms of way forward what has been the reason behind the tremendous growth in revenue in Embu and Garissa. We have not taken stock of the most current. Remember, when we were looking at the good revenue, we were looking at the 2019 report. So let us find out what, within the 6 years that the 2019 report is talking about, what happened in Embu and Garissa. What can we learn? So what lessons are there from Embu and Garissa, and have this been documented for us? The report has just said they did well. But if it could be documented, it would be great for us then as players to ask Nairobi County, look at what happened in Embu. Now it might not be that it is as good, but what they did then, can we replicate within Nairobi County? We are then looking at CRA, is the Commission on Revenue Allocation. They have said in their report that the report we were looking at was the one that looked at 6 years of OSR. But they have now said they want to come up with 2 yearly, but it's called biannual reports. So we are expecting one either this year or next year. So in that biannual report, what we are asking them is they need to not just give us the growth of revenue, but they need to link that growth and tell us how does it feature along the Auditor General's report and the Controller of Budget's report on revenue. So those are critical things for us. Lastly, the same Commission on Revenue Allocation has developed what they call agenda tool. And that is why you were saying you were looking at OSR and its impact on women, youth. And our entry point when you were saying women, youth is we wanted to know which revenue streams provide the highest revenue, and then how has that impacted on men and women. But that data was not there. So and that is what I have said, the data given by the Controller of Budget and the other reports are very general. Revenue increased, but I cannot know, was it the revenue stream from health? So I can link that with women. Was it the revenue stream from where a lot of youth interact, so that I can link that with youth? So without that specific type of data, it is difficult to correlate that. However, there is a tool that Commission on Revenue Allocation has developed in partnership with UN Women. It is called a gender measuring tool. So this tool tries to do what we attempted to do in this study, and it acknowledges that we must look at three things when we are looking at measuring the impact of OSR on gender. There is economic activities. So how does OSR affect economic activities? How does OSR affect voice and agency? So are people, if we are saying this is a revenue that will affect people, PWDs, there is too much confusion on how I want to be political, so I just say PWDs. So if we are saying that this revenue stream might affect them, were they involved at the point of developing it? Was there public participation? That is not our standard public participation where we call everyone. But if this revenue stream, you are sure, will affect women, have you had conversations with them? So our next way forward, which is the last one, is can we test our own source revenue in Nairobi County, growing from that gender measurement tool? It has only been done in Lamu and 2 other counties that I forget. So our take is, as all counties raise own source revenue, can we raise it but test it alongside that tool that has been developed to measure its impact on women, youth, and people with disabilities? And so I want to leave it there for any reactions, any points of clarification that might be required. So let me see whether I can remember all the questions. So first, let me start with the one from, we call him Jonte. I'll start like that because he's worked with us for a long time. So Jonte, unfortunately, we did not go deeper to check on, because the financial year, Alan checked for me the one for the billboards, which financial year that was. I doubt whether it was the electioneering year, but confirm. But of course, in terms of billboards should have revenue, it's good, we need to actually check it out and see what revenue came up from billboards, and you can look at it in 2 ways. It might be electioneering year, so the corporate players are not going to put a lot of their billboards because then they know a lot of business people are worried during an electioneering year. Will you break even? Will there be violence? So you might find the politicians' billboards are there, but now the ones for wanabiashara and companies are not there. The other question is, we know who the politicians are, and so do they even pay that fee? That is the question, and we need to have checked. And I think in the dailies there are issues coming out like that. Are these even people paying? Remember, on an ordinary year, even when you are distributing handbills, it has to be stamped. We need to know, were the posters that were going around for politicians, were they stamped, or those ones now are different because it was up? And so that's an interesting point that Jonte brings, because are we also politicizing revenue collection? So for us, our entry point was on-source revenue, but we were not looking at the accountability bit was something that was coming in to just show that the narrative on increasing OSR is insufficient when you're not looking at audit queries. Remember, the reason again we did not quantify in terms of numbers, but left it open for the media to pick each financial year the issues that were raised, was one, availability of data. We mentioned that in terms of the reports shared by the OAG, OCOB, and the Commission on Revenue Allocation, they do not align. So you will find that one financial year has the OAG report, the Auditor General has finished her report, but some financial years you could see where, like when we did 2020, 2021, Alan, just check, the first 2 financial years we have no data on OAG report. She has not finalized the OAG report for Nairobi County. So when you go to the website, that data is missing. So we had that limitation of data, and I think that's why we were coming in as a recommendation and saying there needs to be collaboration across all those 3 entities so that it would be easy to compare and say within this financial year, accountability reduced. But now you cannot say that because the rate at which the OAG is doing her reports is not as fast-paced as the rate at which the OCOB is doing. And I think standing here, we must congratulate the Office of the Control of Budget. It is the office that has removed their reports as per the constitutional and legal requirement. The OAG has not been as fast, and she has already mentioned the constraints in her office, budgetary allocation to that office, staffing, and you also see the level of detail that goes into her report, because it's a financial reporting over and above like what CRA does. And in that report from the OAG, you would see a lot of recommendations. Reports were shared by the county late for her office to be able to look. So on this specific one, we did not quantify. We picked out the unaccounted for funds by each financial year in the issues simply to link on how revenue, but the data per each financial year that is available, but cumulatively, that is what is not there. There was a question on whether we are supporting the finance bill. Francis, I think that was from you. Is it for financial year 2022?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the financial year 2022. There are some areas of this finance act that we are not comfortable with, particularly when you're looking at loading and offloading of goods in our markets, because we said our entry point is the traders. Yes, but we haven't looked so much into the finance bill 2022 for this financial year. But the immediate one that we are not comfortable with is those ones for loading and offloading. Anything that affects the women is something that was a bit problematic for us.
Any question? Reaction? Okay.
A question, but it's something that I've observed when it comes to tax correction. As we know, our government has developed, we call it devolution, but now I've moved like 2 weeks ago from Nairobi to Kisii. I was taking something there. When I got to Narok, I paid cess. When I got to Kisii, they told me I cannot do my delivery because I don't have a distribution permit, which costs 50,000. So I'm saying, if every county I do business, I have to pay for a distribution permit that is between 30 to 50,000 a year, and maybe me, I'm a seasonal business person. I do like once a month, and after they impounded my car, I took it to what? To the county office that I have to pay. Why can't we have, like, if someone is coming for a one trip, there was no provision that I can pay for a month or even for a day that I was on that county, that I have to pay, and not because I did not have that permit. They said even if I delay again, they're gonna give me a penalty on top of the money they are demanding. No, I'll never come back to this county. I was just coming to do a delivery one thing. Sometimes, honestly, it doesn't make sense the way we collect tax from small business people. It doesn't.
Yes. So, how are you? Is there a way you are going to make their feelings heard by the Nairobi City County or any other nationally? And how are you going to do it after post this report?
Let me see whether I can remember all the questions. So first, let me start with the one from, we call him Jonte. I'll start like that because he's worked with us for a long time. So Jonte, unfortunately, we did not go deeper to check on, because the financial year, Alan checked for me the one for the billboards, which financial year that was. I doubt whether it was the electioneering year, but confirm. But of course, in terms of billboards should have revenue, it's good. We need to actually check it out and see what revenue came up from billboards, and you can look at it in two ways. It might be electioneering year, so the corporate players are not going to put a lot of their billboards because then they know a lot of business people are worried during an electioneering year. Will it break even? Will there be violence? So you might find the politicians' billboards are there, but now the ones for wanabiashara and companies are not there. The other question is, we know who the politicians are, and so do they even pay that fee? That is the question, and we need to have checked. And I think in the dailies there are issues coming out like that. Are these even people paying? Remember, on an ordinary year, even when you are distributing handbills, it has to be stamped. we need to know, were the posters that were going around for politicians, were they stamped, or those ones now are different because it was a... And so that's an interesting point that John Ted brings, because are we also politicizing revenue collection? So for us, our entry point was on-source revenue, but we were not looking at the accountability bit was something that was coming in to just show that the narrative on increasing OSR is insufficient when you're not looking at audit queries. Remember, the reason again we did not quantify in terms of numbers, but left it open for the media to pick each financial year the issues that were raised, was one, availability of data. We mentioned that in terms of the reports shared by the OAG, OCOB, and the Commission on Revenue Allocation, they do not align. So you will find that one financial year has the OAG report, the Auditor General has finished her report, but some financial years you could see where, like when we did 2021, Alan, just check, the first two financial years we have no data on OAG report. She has not finalized the OAG report for Nairobi County. So when you go to the website, that data is missing. So we had that limitation of data, and I think that's why we were coming in as a recommendation and saying there needs to be collaboration across all those three entities so that it would be easy to compare and say within this financial year, accountability reduced. But now you cannot say that because the rate at which the OAG is doing her reports is not as fast-paced as the rate at which the OCOB is doing. And I think standing here, we must congratulate the Office of the Controller of Budget. It is the office that has removed their reports as per the constitutional and legal requirement. The OAG has not been as fast, and she has already mentioned the constraints in her office, budgetary allocation to that office, staffing, and you also see the level of detail that goes into her report because it's a financial reporting over and above like what CRA does. And in that report from the OAG, you would see a lot of recommendation is reports were shared by the county late for her office to be able to look. So on this specific one, we did not quantify. We picked out the unaccounted for funds by each financial year in the issues simply to link on how revenue, but the data per each financial year that is available, but cumulatively, that is what is not there. There was a question on whether we are supporting the finance bill. Francis, I think that was from you. Is it for financial year 2022?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the financial year 2022. There are some areas of this Finance Act that we are not comfortable with, particularly when you're looking at loading and offloading of goods in our markets, because we said our entry point is the traders. Yes, but we haven't looked so much into the Finance Bill 2022 for this financial year, but the immediate one that we are not comfortable with is those ones for loading and offloading. Anything that affects the women is something that was a bit problematic for us.
Thank you. The unveiling of the on-source revenue and its impact on women, youth, and people with disabilities, which is a case study of Nairobi City County, has been done by the young and dynamic. Let's give them a good round of applause. Let's give them a good round of applause. Wow, thank you. Thank you, thank you. We can just give